Pelicans are a genus of large water birds that make up the family Pelecanidae. They are characterized by a long beak and a large throat pouch used for catching prey and draining water from the scooped-up contents before swallowing. They have predominantly pale plumage, except for the brown and Peruvian pelicans. The bills, pouches, and bare facial skin of all pelicans become brightly colored before the breeding season. The 8 living pelican species have a patchy global distribution, ranging latitudinally from the tropics to the temperate zone. Though they are absent from interior South America and from polar regions and the open ocean. Long thought to be related to fregatibirds, cormorants, tropic birds, and gannets and boobies, pelicans instead are now known to be most closely related to the showbill and hammercock, and are placed in the order Pelecaniformes. Ibises, spoonbills, herons, and bitterns have been classified in the same order. Fossil evidence of pelicans dates back at least 36 million years to the remains of a tibia tarsus recovered from late Eocene strata of Egypt that bears striking similarity to modern species of pelican. They are thought to have evolved in the Old World and spread into the Americas. This is reflected in the relationships within the genus as the 8 species divide into Old World and New World lineages. This hypothesis is supported by fossil evidence from the oldest pelican taxa. Pelicans at National Zoo, Bangladesh. Pelicans frequent inland and coastal waters, where they feed principally on fish, catching them at or near the water surface. They are gregarious birds, traveling in flocks, hunting cooperatively, and breeding colonially. 4 white plumage species tend to nest on the ground, and 4 brown or gray plumage species nest mainly in trees. The relationship between pelicans and people has often been contentious. The birds have been persecuted because of their perceived competition with commercial and recreational fishing. Their populations have fallen through habitat destruction, disturbance, and environmental pollution, and 3 species are of conservation concern. They also have a long history of cultural significance in mythology, and in Christian and heraldic iconography. The name comes from the ancient Greek word pelikan, which is itself derived from the word pelekes meaning axe. In classical times, the word was applied to both the pelican and the woodpecker. The genus Pelecanus was first formally described by Carl Linnaeus in his landmark 1758 10th edition of Systema Naturae. He described the distinguishing characteristics as a straight bill hooked at the tip, linear nostrils, a bare face, and fully webbed feet. This early definition included fregatibirds, cormorants, and sulids, as well as pelicans. The family Pelecanidae was introduced by the French polymath Constantin Samuel Rafinesque in 1815. Pelicans give their name to the Pelecaniformes, an order which has a varied taxonomic history. Tropic birds, darters, cormorants, gannets, boobies, and fregatibirds, all traditional members of the order, have since been reclassified. Tropic birds into their own order, Phaethontiformes, and the remainder into the Suliformes. In their place, herons, ibises, spoonbills, the hammercock, and the showbill have now been transferred into the Pelecaniformes. Molecular evidence suggests that the showbill and the hammercock form a sister group to the pelicans, though some doubt exists as to the exact relationships among the 3 lineages. The oldest known record of pelicans is a right tibia tarsus very similar to those of modern species from the Birkat Karen Formation in the Wadi al-Hidden in Egypt. Dating to the late Eocene, referred to the genus Pelecanus. The 8 living pelican species were traditionally divided into 2 groups, one containing 4 ground nesters with mainly white adult plumage, Australian, Dalmatian, Great White, and American white pelicans, and one containing 4 gray or brown plumage species which nest preferentially either in trees or on sea rocks. The largely marine brown and Peruvian pelicans, formerly considered conspecific, are sometimes separated from the others by placement in the subgenus Leptopelecanus, but in fact species with both sorts of appearance and nesting behavior are found in either. DNA sequencing of both mitochondrial and nuclear genes yielded quite different relationships. The 3 New World pelicans formed one lineage, with the American white pelican sister to the 2 brown pelicans, and the 5 Old World species the other. The Dalmatian, pinkback, and spot-billed were all closely related to one another, while the Australian white pelican was their next closest relative. The great white pelican also belonged to this lineage, but was the first to diverge from the common ancestor of the other 4 species. This finding suggests that pelicans evolved in the Old World and spread into the Americas, and that preference for tree or ground nesting is more related to size than genetics. The fossil record shows that the pelican lineage has existed for at least 36 million years. The oldest known pelican fossil was assigned to E. Pelecanus aegyptiacus and was found in late Eocene deposits of the Birkat Karen Formation, within the Wadi al-Hidden World Heritage Site in Egypt. A more complete fossil pelican of early Oligocene age is known from deposits at the Luberon in southeastern France, and is remarkably similar to modern forms. Its beak is almost complete and is morphologically identical to that of present-day pelicans, showing that this advanced feeding apparatus was already in existence at the time. An early Miocene fossil has been named Myopelecanus gracilis on the basis of certain features originally considered unique, but later thought to lie within the range of interspecific variation in Pelecanus. The late Eocene Protopelecanus may be a pelecaniform or suliform or a similar aquatic bird such as a pseudotooth, but is not generally considered a pelecanid. Pelicans are very large birds with very long bills characterized by a downcurved hook at the end of the upper mandible, and the attachment of a huge gular pouch to the lower. The slender rami of the lower bill and the flexible tongue muscles form the pouch into a basket for catching fish, and sometimes rainwater, though to not hinder the swallowing of large fish. The tongue itself is tiny. They have a long neck and short stout legs with large, fully webbed feet. Although they are among the heaviest of flying birds, they are relatively light for their apparent bulk because of air pockets in the skeleton and beneath the skin, enabling them to float high in the water. The tail is short and square. The wings are long and broad, suitably shaped for soaring and gliding flight, and have the unusually large number of 30 to 35 secondary flight feathers. Males are generally larger than females and have longer bills. The smallest species is the brown pelican, small individuals of which can be no more than 2.75 kilograms and 1.06 meters long, with a wingspan of as little as 1.83 meters. The largest is believed to be the Dalmatian, at up to 15 kilograms and 1.83 meters in length, with a maximum wingspan of 3 meters. The Australian pelican's bill may grow up to 0.5 meters long in large males, the longest of any bird. Pelicans have mainly light-collared plumage, the exceptions being the brown and Peruvian pelicans. The bills, pouches, and bare facial skin of all species become brighter before breeding season commences. The throat pouch of the Californian subspecies of the brown pelican turns bright red, and fades to yellow after the eggs are laid, while the throat pouch of the Peruvian pelican turns blue. The American white pelican grows a prominent knob on its bill that is shed once females have laid eggs. The plumage of immature pelicans is darker than that of adults. Newly hatched chicks are naked and pink, darkening to gray or black after 4 to 14 days, then developing a covering of white or gray down. Anatomical dissections of two brown pelicans in 1939 showed that pelicans have a network of air sacs under their skin situated across the ventral surface, including the throat, breast, and undersides of the wings, as well as having air sacs in their bones. The air sacs are connected to the airways of the respiratory system, and the pelican can keep its air sacs inflated by closing its glottis, but how air sacs are inflated is not clear. The air sacs serve to keep the pelican remarkably buoyant in the water and may also cushion the impact of the pelican's body on the water surface when they dive from flight into water to catch fish. Superficial air sacs may also help to round body contours, especially over the abdomen, where surface protuberances may be caused by viscera changing size and position, to enable the overlying feathers to form more effective heat insulation and also to enable feathers to be held in position for good aerodynamics. Modern pelicans are found on all continents except Antarctica. They primarily inhabit warm regions, although breeding ranges extend to latitudes of 45 degrees south and 60 degrees north. Birds of inland and coastal waters. They are absent from polar regions, the deep ocean, oceanic islands, and inland South America, as well as from the eastern coast of South America from the mouth of the Amazon River southwards. Subfossil bones have been recovered from as far south as New Zealand's South Island. Although their scarcity and isolated occurrence suggests that these remains may have merely been vagrants from Australia. Pelicans swim well with their strong legs and their webbed feet. They rub the backs of their heads on their preen glands to pick up an oily secretion, which they transfer to their plumage to waterproof it. Holding their wings only loosely against their bodies, pelicans float with relatively little of their bodies below the water surface. They dissipate excess heat by gular flutter, rippling the skin of the throat and pouch with the bill open to promote evaporative cooling. They roost and loaf communally on beaches, sandbanks, and in shallow water. A fibrous layer deep in the breast muscles can hold the wings rigidly horizontal for gliding and soaring. Thus, they use thermals for soaring to heights of 3,000 meters or more, combined both with gliding and with flapping flight in V formation. To commute distances up to 150 kilometers to feeding areas. Pelicans also fly low over stretches of water, using a phenomenon known as ground effect to reduce drag and increase lift. As the air flows between the wings and the water surface, it is compressed to a higher density and exerts a stronger upward force against the bird above. Hence, substantial energy is saved while flying. Adult pelicans rely on visual displays and behavior to communicate, particularly using their wings and bills. Agonistic behavior consists of thrusting and snapping at opponents with their bills, or lifting and waving their wings in a threatening manner. Adult pelicans grunt when at the colony, but are generally silent elsewhere or outside breeding season. Conversely, colonies are noisy, as chicks vocalize extensively. Pelicans are gregarious and nest colonially. Pairs are monogamous for a single season, but the pair bond extends only to the nesting area. Mates are independent away from the nest. The grunt nesting species have a complex communal courtship involving a group of males chasing a single female in the air, on land, or in the water while pointing, gaping, and thrusting their bills at each other. They can finish the process in a day. The tree nesting species have a simpler process in which perched males advertise for females. The location of the breeding colony is constrained by the availability of an ample supply of fish to eat. Although pelicans can use thermals to soar and commute for hundreds of kilometers daily to fetch food, the Australian pelican has two reproductive strategies depending on the local degree of environmental predictability. Colonies of tens or hundreds, rarely thousands, of birds breed regularly on small coastal and subcoastal islands where food is seasonally or permanently available. In arid inland Australia, especially in the endorheic Lake Eyre Basin, pelicans breed opportunistically in very large numbers of up to 50,000 pairs, when irregular major floods, which may be many years apart, fill ephemeral salt lakes and provide large amounts of food for several months before drying out again. In all species, copulation takes place at the nest site. It begins shortly after pairing and continues for 3-10 days before egg laying. The male brings the nesting material, in ground nesting species sometimes in the pouch, and in tree nesting species crosswise in the bill. The female then heaps the material up to form a simple structure. The eggs are oval, white, and coarsely textured. All species normally lay at least 2 eggs. The usual clutch size is 1 to 3, rarely up to 6. Both sexes incubate with the eggs on top of or below the feet. They may display when changing shifts. Incubation takes 30-36 days. Hatching success for undisturbed pairs can be as high as 95%, but because of sibling competition or siblicide, in the wild, usually all but one nestling dies within the first few weeks. Both parents feed their young. Small chicks are fed by regurgitation. After about a week, they are able to put their heads into their parents' pouches and feed themselves. Sometimes before, but especially after being fed, the pelican chick may seem to throw a tantrum by loudly vocalizing and dragging itself around in a circle by one wing and leg, striking its head on the ground or anything nearby, and the tantrums sometimes end in what looks like a seizure that results in the chick falling briefly unconscious. The reason is not clearly known, but a common belief is that it is to draw attention to itself and away from any siblings who are waiting to be fed. Parents of ground nesting species sometimes drag older young around roughly by the head before feeding them. From about 25 days old, the young of these species gather in pods or creches of up to 100 birds in which parents recognize and feed only their own offspring. By 6-8 weeks they wander around, occasionally swimming, and may practice communal feeding. Young of all species fledge 10-12 weeks after hatching. They may remain with their parents afterwards, but are now seldom or never fed. They are mature at 3 or 4 years old. Overall breeding success is highly variable. Pelicans live for 15 to 25 years in the wild, although one reached an age of 54 years in captivity. The diet of pelicans usually consists of fish, but occasionally amphibians, turtles, crustaceans, insects, birds, and mammals are also eaten. The size of the preferred prey fish varies depending on pelican species and location. For example, in Africa, the pink-backed pelican generally takes fish ranging in size from fry up to 400 grams, and the great white pelican prefers somewhat larger fish, up to 600 grams. But in Europe, the latter species has been recorded taking fish up to 1,850 grams. In deep water, white pelicans often fish alone. Nearer the shore, several encircle schools of small fish or form a line to drive them into the shallows, beating their wings on the water surface and then scooping up the prey. Although all pelican species may feed in groups or alone, the Dalmatian, pink-backed, and spot-billed pelicans are the only ones to prefer solitary feeding. When fishing in groups, all pelican species have been known to work together to catch their prey, and Dalmatian pelicans may even cooperate with great cormorants. Large fish are caught with the bill tip, then tossed up in the air to be caught and slid into the gullet head first. A gull will sometimes stand on the pelican's head, peck it to distraction, and grab a fish from the open bill. Pelicans in their turn sometimes snatch prey from other water birds.